Imagine this. You're in the middle of the Peruvian desert, one of the driest places on Earth. Etched into the ground are these colossal drawings. We're talking monkeys, hummingbirds, spiders, and straight lines that run for miles. But here's the catch. They were made over 1,500 years ago by people who had no way to fly. And that is where our mystery begins. And when we say vast, we mean vast. Some of these drawings, these geoglyphs, are the size of skyscrapers. If you're standing right next to them on the ground, they just look like shallow lines in the dirt. But get up high, way up in the air, and suddenly, bam, they snap into focus as one of the most incredible artistic wonders of the ancient world. So that's the big question, isn't it? If the people who spent generations creating these masterpieces could never actually see them in their entirety, then who was the audience? Who were they for? That's the puzzle we're going to dig into today. All right, so let's set the scene. We're in the Nazca Desert, and the artists here were the Nazca people, a civilization that was thriving here long, long before the Inca ever showed up. And for centuries, these incredible messages of theirs were just hiding in plain sight. Okay, so the Nazca were at this for centuries, starting way back around 100 BCE. You can see they were flourishing, making all those famous animal figures in their early period. But then, look right here. Around 540 CE, a massive, decades-long drought hits the region. Now, that's a really important clue, because by 800 CE, the Nazca culture was in decline, and they just stopped making the lines. So, the million-dollar question, how on earth did they do it? Well, the technique was actually brilliant in its simplicity, but it took incredible precision. All they did was move the dark, sun-baked rocks on the surface to reveal the lighter-colored sand underneath. They probably used simple tools, wooden stakes and long ropes, to scale up their designs. And the reason they're still here? The climate is so dry and windless that a 2,000-year-old drawing can literally be wiped out by a single footprint. All right, so we've known about these lines for a while now. And ever since we found them, we've been trying to figure out what they mean. And boy, the theories have been all over the map, from serious science to, stuff that's a little more out of this world. Now, you can't talk about the Nazca lines without talking about Maria Reiche. She was a German mathematician. People called her the Lady of the Lines, and she dedicated her entire life to studying and protecting them. Her big idea? That the Nazca Desert was the world's largest astronomy book. She thought the lines pointed to where the sun would rise on the solstices, and that figures like the monkey actually represented star constellations, like the Big Dipper. And here's the thing. Maria Reiche was an absolute hero for saving the lines from destruction. But her theory about the stars, it hasn't really held up. Later researchers, using powerful computers, ran the numbers. And while a few lines match up with stars here and there, mostly by chance, the vast majority show no real connection to celestial events at all. Of course, since you can only really appreciate these from the sky, it was probably inevitable that we'd get here. The ancient astronaut theories. You've probably heard them, that the lines were landing strips for alien spacecraft, or maybe giant welcome signs for extraterrestrials. It's a fun idea, for sure, but archaeologists have some pretty simple and solid explanations. First off, the Nazca worshipped sky gods, so making giant pictures for your gods to see from above, that makes perfect sense. Second, you don't actually need a spaceship to see them. There are hills all around that give you a pretty great view. And third, there's just zero evidence of any kind of alien tech anywhere near the site. So if the lines aren't for stars or aliens, what are they for? Well, this is where the story takes a really cool 21st century plot twist. Because modern technology, specifically artificial intelligence, is completely changing the game. See, for almost 100 years, we kind of thought we'd found most of the geoglyphs. But archaeologists knew there were probably smaller, more faded ones out there that were almost impossible to spot with the naked eye. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of square miles of desert. So they turned to AI for a fresh set of eyes. So, researchers trained an AI to pore over high-resolution aerial photos of the desert. And get this, in just a few months, it found 303 new geoglyphs. 303! It nearly doubled the number of known figures almost overnight. And that new data led to an absolute bombshell of a discovery. It turns out we haven't been looking at one thing this whole time. We've been looking at two. The huge, famous ones, like the hummingbird and the monkey, are what they call line-type glyphs. They show wild animals and they're near big ceremonial paths. But all these new ones the AI found, they're relief type. They're way smaller, they show people and farm animals like llamas, and, this is the key, they're right next to old footpaths. And you can really see the difference here with these smaller human-like figures. The thinking now is that the giant glyphs were for huge community ceremonies, but these smaller ones, they might have been more like roadside shrines or trail markers, meant for just one person or a small group walking by. But that's not all. The AI helped us find the little guys, but what about those massive, long, straight lines and giant shapes? Well, another incredible theory connects them to the one thing that matters more than anything else in a desert: water. You have to remember, this place is bone dry. Rivers might only have water in them a couple of years out of every decade. So the Nazca came up with a genius solution. They built puquios, this amazing network of underground aqueducts that tapped into water deep underground, giving them a reliable source all year long. And it all comes down to geology. Rain falls way up in the Andes Mountains, seeps into the ground, and flows through these hidden aquifers right under the desert. Somehow, the Nazca became master geologists. They figured out exactly where that water was and how to get to it. And here is the punchline. Researchers have found that many of those giant geometric lines point directly to where those underground water sources are. Think about that. The lines weren't just for ceremonies. They may have been a functional, sacred map, pointing the way to the hidden sources of life itself. So, we've gone from ancient mystery to cutting-edge science. But the story is far from over. Because today, this unbelievable World Heritage Site is facing a ton of modern threats that could erase it completely. The same fragile desert that preserved the lines for millennia is now being threatened by illegal mining, by expanding towns, even just by trucks driving through. It's truly heartbreaking to see these ancient wonders at risk. But there is reason to be hopeful. Just recently, after a huge public outcry, the Peruvian government actually reversed a decision that would have made the protected area smaller. It just goes to show that when people pay attention and speak up, these treasures can be saved for the future. So what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that the Nazca Lines aren't one single mystery with one easy answer. They were a lot of things at once. They were giant pathways for community rituals. They were small trail markers for everyday travelers. And they were a brilliant map to hidden water. They show us a people who were sophisticated engineers, geologists, and deeply connected to their world. Which brings us right back to where we started. Even with all our satellites and AI, the most profound mystery is still there. The Nazca created these stunning messages that they themselves could never fully see. So you have to wonder, who were they really for? Were they for the gods they saw in the sky? Or were they, maybe, also meant for us?